There's a really common serve mistake that tennis players of all levels make, and yet I've never seen it addressed before in a lesson on the courts or in a video on YouTube. And today I want to bring it to the surface and get thoughts and comments from the community, coaches, players. I want to call out what this mistake is because I think it's been leading to my own lack of rhythm and timing and power on my delivery of my serve, and it kills the serve of tons of other tennis players all around the world. So let's dive into it. And I want to start with an example of one of my recent students. And so you're going to hear me talking to my student here and showing him the difference between his original serve, which is going to be on the left, and the movement that we were working on, which is on the right. And what I want you to pay attention to is the distance between my student's racket and his head on both the original one, which is on the left, and on the drill that we're doing on the right. So just listen carefully and watch carefully.
On the left, this is the old drop, this isn't doing anything to load or stretch your shoulder. And the one on the right, this is the shoulder stretch. Does that make sense? So this is kind of like your forehand in that your body's leading here while your arm and your shoulder are lagging behind and stretching behind. This right here, look at how your arm kind of bounces at the bottom and then takes like a left-hand turn and then comes up. And so this ends up being kind of more of a pushing motion with your arm because you're not really loading your shoulder. You're just bouncing your arm back behind yourself. Whereas this would actually load and then release the shoulder.
So this movement, look at the one on the left again. And what phrase comes to mind when you see this movement right here? How many times have you heard the phrase back scratch position? And a lot of coaches and a lot of players talk about scratching the back to achieve a good racket drop. And that leads to a move like what this student is doing, where he's bending at the elbow to drop his racket down behind himself. And unfortunately, what that leads to is a very weak position. Instead of stretching the shoulder, he just simply squeezes at the elbow. And so what he's doing is pushing upwards with his racket, using his forearm, instead of stretching the shoulder. And that move keeps a lot more distance between the racket and the head. And so this whole idea of a this whole idea of a back scratch position, frequently players try to achieve it by bending at the elbow, and then that creates this weak position here with the arm and elbow instead of a stretched position between the arm, the shoulder, and the rest of the body. This is much stronger than this, trying to go up towards contact. And when you deconstruct American football quarterback or a baseball pitcher, this is the stretch that's happening and then the release that's happening with the shoulder. When combined with the body leading and the arm and the shoulder stretching and then releasing, that's where tons of racket head speed comes from, or ball speed if you're a baseball pitcher or football quarterback. So just recently, if you've been watching my personal journey recently as a player, you'll know that I've struggled going outside with my rhythm and my timing and on my serve specifically. So recently, right before I had that student, I was recording my own serve, and I took out the iPad. I was like, this is stupid. My serve has just been feeling so like herky-jerky, and there's just lack of rhythm and timing and tempo. And on this particular day when I was working on my serve and specifically took out the iPad to try to record it and see what was going on, I had a serve where I actually hit the back of my head with my racket. And that's this serve right here. This is just kind of like warm-up mode for me, and I'm trying to just move through a smooth, relaxed motion. You can see my racket actually collided with the back of my head on this serve. And it's because I'm doing the same thing that my student was doing. I'm squeezing at the elbow and just simply collapsing my arm into this like back scratch kind of position. And I want you to look at how far away, or rather how close to my back my racket is. And so there's this very close drop or squeeze of the arm by bending the elbow, and then the racket stays in tight close to my body before going up towards contact and releasing. Now, when I look at old video of myself, just the other day in my Facebook feed, I happened to see this old video where we were messing around with a drone and getting footage overhead. And I want you to watch my racket path here. Look at this. This is totally different. Look at how much space there is between my racket and my head, first of all. Second of all, look at the angle between my forearm and my bicep, aka the elbow, joint here. And then thirdly, look at how when I pull upwards, how there's this stretch that's happening at my shoulder. I'm loading my shoulder and then releasing that stretch through the point of contact. So this video here was taken like 2-3 years ago. This is before I started kind of coming back and trying to play again. And this is a completely different motion than what I was just doing like a week or two ago when I hit myself in the head. Look at the space between my head and my racket, and then between my racket and my back. So I believe that for me, what caused this was just kind of the jarring sensation of going outside after years of training inside, not being comfortable with it, not being familiar with like the depth of tossing the ball up in the air, and I was struggling finding my rhythm and my timing. So I think what's happened is my arm has taken over the driver's seat of my serve, and instead of my body leading and my arm and my shoulder staying really loose and relaxed to create that stretch, if you want to call it like kind of a lag with the shoulder, and then release that stretch up towards contact, my arm has started to kind of take over the motion and bend here. And that's kept the racket close to my head, close to my body, close to my back. It kind of looks like a back scratch position. But let me show you some professional examples, and maybe you'll be surprised to see that the whole back scratch position is kind of a misnomer. So this first clip, I was just doing a little bit of searching around the internet this morning, and here's a clip of Samantha Stosur. It's very hard to find footage shot from that drone angle. In fact, this is really the only other one that I could find of a professional player when I was looking earlier this morning. So check out Stosur here. And this is just kind of going frame by frame. This is a really old video. But look at how her chest and her body is leading and how that creates this big stretch of the shoulder here. That in reality is what creates the racket drop in a high level, high performance serve. And I want you to look at the space between her racket and her head here as she drops the racket back and goes into that stretch shoulder position. And so this right here, I mean, that's a huge stretch of the shoulder. If you want to use the word, kind of lag, the whole principle here, as I mentioned to my student briefly, it's the same thing as on a forehand, where the big, strong parts of the body should lead, and then the smaller parts of the body, the arm, the shoulder, the hand, should follow. And when that's done dynamically and very aggressively, then different parts of the body get stretched, and then if you're loose and relaxed, will release through the point of contact. When you try to force that path, when you try to force that racket motion, when you try to force a racket drop, then you start using and relying on smaller parts of the body, and that's when things get jerky and inefficient, and you end up kind of muscling through the shot. Let's look at a few other pro examples. This was the only other pro example I could find from overhead, but let's look at some other angles, and you can see these same kind of fingerprints throughout other professional strokes. Big thank you to the YouTube channel Love Tennis. That's where I grabbed this. This is just kind of a compilation. I think they grabbed these clips from all over the internet. So let's look at a couple pro examples really quickly. Here's Federer. Watch his transition from his trophy pose as his racket falls. Look at how his chest turns upwards, and look at the amount of space between his body and his racket here. That, again, is kind of the stretching of the shoulder. And look at the angle of the elbow, excuse me, the angle between the forearm and the bicep there, how it's at 90 degrees, and that big stretch then unwinds up towards contact. Here's one of Djokovic. Watch how after his arm starts to fall, his chest turns up to lead, And then look at this big shoulder stretch that happens. That's what creates that racket drop. Look at the amount of space between his racket and his back as he goes into his back scratch position, back behind his back. I mean, there's a solid foot for sure, maybe a foot and a half of space between his racket and his back as he goes into that racket drop position. Here's another one of Roger from a different angle. Once his racket starts to fall, again, watch his shoulder blade. You see how there's this kind of sunny kind of wrinkles on his back? Watch how those wrinkles start to transition right as his racket starts to drop and fall into his racket drop. And then look at the space between his racket and his back here in his racket drop. Tip of his racket all the way down to waist height. And look at the angle of his elbow here in that racket drop position and that stretch of the shoulder before he goes up towards contact and releases that stretch. Check out this one. Here's a blast from the past. We got Pistol Pete here. And watch how once his racket starts to drop, look at how his back and his chest are rotating around. And look at the angle of his arm and his elbow here. And look at how far away from his back his racket is. There's that stretch of the shoulder and then the release up towards contact. Here's another blast from the past. We got Andre here. Same angle. Watch how once his racket tip starts to fall, look at how his core and his chest are turning, coming around. Look at the distance between his racket and his body and the angle of his elbow here as his racket drops. So you can see lots of professional examples here of players that are all following the same kind of pattern of the body leading the way, and the sequence here generally is that the body kind of starts as the racket starts to drop. And I think this is very analogous to a modern day forehand, where there's the unit turn, and then as the racket starts to fall, that's when the body starts to unwind. And then there's this like slingshot action that takes place where the racket reverses, transitions from facing forwards to facing back, and then there's that lag everybody talks about, and then the release. And it's the same thing on the serve, where the body is leading, that's creating this stretch with the shoulder, and then there's the release as the body continues leading the way and turning upwards towards contact. So if at any point in time your arm tries to like do the thing, and like your arm tries to take over and cause like the racket drop to happen by scratching the back or doing anything else, once you lose that looseness and you lose the primary force of the body doing the work, then rhythm goes away, timing goes away, smoothness goes away, efficiency goes away, racket head speed goes away, everything that you want out of a serve goes away. Really, one more quick point here. I'm aware of this video from Ryan from 2 Minute Tennis, where he talks about the whole party hat or birthday hat kind of thing. And this is to avoid waiter tray, to keep the racket closer instead of coming away from the body in a waiter tray or like racket face open kind of motion. And sorry, let me get to the part where he's actually hitting serves here with the party hat. So you'll notice that, yes, I just want to let everybody know that I'm aware of this video. I'm aware of Ryan does fantastic work. I want you to see how even though he's knocking the hat off his head, he's still getting to this stretched position. And this is just like a half speed, kind of casual swing. But look at the distance between his racket and his back, and look at the stretch he's creating and the angle between his forearm and his bicep. Let me see if I can find one where he goes a little bit harder or faster. So they're all kind of like casual, half speed, just like demonstration. If he was going full speed, I believe we'd see even more space between the racket and his body, even more stretch with the shoulder. But you can see he's not accomplishing this by bending at the elbow to like knock the hat off. The transition is happening because his shoulder is getting loaded and stretched, and he's not, flopping the hand back open into a waiter tray position. So anyway, he wasn't focusing on the same thing. This is the only thing I can think of where somebody kind of addresses this point. Maybe it's probably been talked about someplace and I've just missed it. So tell me what you think about this whole topic and discussion in the comments down below. And if you've seen a lesson or a discussion or whatever where this has been addressed, do me a favor and link it down below. It's something that I am going to have to work on, and I'm going to be working through my own drills and progressions. If you'd like to see what those are, then let me know in the comments down below. And if this whole discussion conversation was helpful, do me a favor and click the like button. Every like on every video donates a penny to the Milwaukee Tennis Education Foundation. Last month we had 15,000 likes, so just sent a check to the MTEF for $150 for the month of August. So thanks for everybody who's clicked the like button in September. We'll be making monthly donations. So help support the videos, help support our local community here in Milwaukee. So thank you for that. Looking forward to seeing your comments, your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful to some of you out there. Take care.